I'm Brittany Lewis. I am a breaking news reporter here at Forbes. Joining me now is Blois Olson. He's a political analyst and publisher of Morning Take. Blois, thank you so much for joining me.
Happy to be here, Brittany.
I really appreciate you coming on and joining me because you must have had a really busy past couple of days because you broke the story that Minnesota Governor Tim Walz is dropping his re-election bid. And his departure from the race comes at a time when the state's government is embroiled in a billion-dollar fraud scandal. And for Walz specifically, this is a really stunning political trajectory, right? Because just a year and a half ago, he was the vice presidential pick. Now he's dropping out of the race. But if you could, to start off the conversation, walk us through your weekend. When did you see the writing on the walls that he was dropping out of the race?
Sure. I think there was a lot of speculation of whether or not, since last fall, whether or not his heart was in the race. And yet Democrats in Minnesota thought he was the best chance to retain the governorship. And so last fall, during our state fair, which is a great Minnesota get-together, there was this sense that maybe his heart wasn't in it. We had a school shooting during that time at Annunciation, and that seemed to ramp him up on issues like gun control. And so he did announce late September that he would run for a third term, which no governor in Minnesota has ever had. And then since then, we've just really had this thread of fraud issues. And so over the last couple of weeks, months, there was this sense, can he survive these fraud scandals or is he too damaged? And then last Friday, I got news that he was meeting with his family and that there were serious cracks in the foundation of his political base. And then Sunday got word that he had scheduled an all-staff meeting, a cabinet meeting, and a campaign meeting, all within a couple hours. And then my sourcing just told me that the writing was on the wall. He was not going to run again.
And then he had a meeting with Senator Amy Klobuchar, and I can imagine they just weren't talking about the weather. So if you could, based on what your sources have told you, what you've gathered, bring us into that room of the meeting. Whose idea was it for him to drop out? Did he say it? Did Amy Klobuchar suggest it? What did that really look like?
I think, again, go back to last fall. If Walz wouldn't have run, Amy Klobuchar was making preparations to run last fall. And so she had already scenario planned out whether or not she was going to run. She is the dean of the Democratic Party, the senior member in Minnesota. And so I don't know exactly what happened in that room, but I think she was prepared to say, I'm going to run if you don't. Or Walz had already made up his mind. The sense is that Governor Walz had already made up his mind. His family's been under extreme pressure, security threats, et cetera. And we did have an assassination here of our House Speaker last summer. And so violence in politics is real to Minnesota elected officials. And I think all of the combinations, the pressure on fraud, the finding of the energy to run for a third term, and then party pressure within the DFL from Senator Amy Klobuchar, other legislators, I think just, there was never one thing. I think there were multiple things that made Governor Walz make this decision.
And then when you look at Walz as a candidate, this fraud scandal, which we will dive a little deeper into, really made him a weak candidate. The Republican field is very crowded for this race. If I'm someone like Minnesota House Speaker Lisa Dameth, if I'm waking up to this news, what am I thinking? Because a lot of the Republicans are running on, hey, Democrats are responsible for this fraud. We can fix it. Now you wake up and Walz, who is really the face of this fraud in Republicans' eyes and a lot of people in the state's eyes, he's out. What does this do to their campaign?
They're going to refocus. They're already refocusing. They're trying to tie Amy Klobuchar to Tim Walz already 2 days after he's already dropped out. Lisa Dameth is the speaker. She's one of the leading candidates. Kristen Robbins is the chair of the fraud committee. So this crowded field is going to kind of sort itself out probably in the next 6 to 8 weeks of who has the best chance. But finally, I think one of the things that Republicans are trying to figure out is not just whether or not they're running against Amy Klobuchar for governor, but how damaged is the Democratic brand in Minnesota? Republicans have not won here for 20 years, and so statewide. And so that becomes one of the considerations is who's the best Republican candidate. The other factor here is that Governor Walz isn't going anywhere. He's just going to be a lame duck for the next year. He's going to be visible. He's going to be loud in his view against the president. And so I don't think he's going to help make the fraud stories go away. We had another fraud story break yesterday, and we anticipate more prosecutions, more examples in the coming months, which will keep Walz in the spotlight.
And then when you're looking at this race overall, do you think that when is Senator Amy Klobuchar going to announce either way that she's jumping in the race or she won't? And B, at that point, do you think that it would be her race to lose? And I know that we still have a long way to go here. You don't have a crystal ball, but what are you thinking?
She clearly changes the narrative. She is a very strong performer. And Republicans are worried that maybe they push Governor Walz out of the race too early because Senator Klobuchar has performed better in rural areas than Governor Walz and other Democrats. And so she does have more statewide appeal traditionally when she's been on the ballot. And so it's still hers to lose, but there is a lane for Republicans to win. They just need the right candidate and the right resources to make it a very competitive race.